Good afternoon. My name is Ayieko Jakoyo, a teacher of geography and business studies, and today I want to share something on geography paper 1, specifically how to handle questions on in geography paper 1. And my topic today bases on the terms used in geography paper 1 and how to handle them, that is, how to present your work. I will go directly. One of the terms that is used there is define, and in this case, the candidate is required to precisely give the meaning of the term as it appears in the text, and any alteration in the definition of the term, a student is likely to lose a mark. For instance, if you're asked to define the term geography, generally, you understand we define it as the study of distribution and interrelationship of natural and human phenomena in relation to the Earth's surface. And when you're marking, the points we look at is distribution and interrelationship. And also the word, the study must be there because it is a discipline. And being a discipline, it means that it is a field of study. Therefore, if any of the three words will miss in the definition, a student will miss a mark in that case. So he or she is supposed to precisely give the meaning of the term as it appears in the text. The other terms that are also used there is name or list or enumerate or give, write down or identify. They are treated as one. And in this case, they are mainly one-word answers. And one of the characteristics of one-word answers is that they are mainly short. As I said, they are one word. And the spelling must be correct for the student to earn a mark. If a candidate will give a wrong spelling in that case, it means he or she will lose a mark. Mainly, for instance, if you're looking at the topic, if we're looking at the topic ocean seas and their coasts, we classify the features as erosional features and depositional features. Maybe, for example, you've been asked to name 3 depositional features of ocean seas and their coasts. And the features, you understand, some are the beach, and beach should be B-E-A-C-H. We have spit, which is S-P-I-T. We have tombolo, that is T-O-M-B-O-L-O. And we also have the Caspet Foreland. So what I'm basically saying is that those words should be correctly spelled. And in case a student gets it wrong in spelling, also we deny a mark. So that's one of the areas where students miss a mark, especially in short answer questions where they're supposed to give one word answer. Then the other term used there is state. And the word state comes from the word statement. That means that a candidate is supposed to give an answer in a short but complete or comprehensive statement. Therefore, statement should be self-explanatory. It should not leave room where the examiner starts trying to figure out what the candidate wanted to say. And in this case, one word answer does not score in a question where you've been asked to state. For instance, if you have been asked to state 3 characteristics of a river at its old stage. When you're looking at the topic action of rivers, we know that we classify the river profile right from the youthful stage to the middle stage up to the old stage. What the candidate is supposed to do is that he or she is supposed to find out what is the dominant process at the stage of the river that is in question. And the dominant process at the old stage is that the river is depositing. Therefore, the characteristic comes from the deposition of materials. And one of the characteristics is that at the old stage, bluffs and raised riverbeds develops. That is a statement that is self-explanatory. You don't need to explain it more than that. The other point could be the river velocity reduces and the river is flowing sluggishly. And the sluggishness of the river definitely because some of the materials have been deposited. The other reason could be that the river may divide itself into what we call the distributaries or the braided channels. So when you look at those three answers that I've given, they are complete and comprehensive statements. So that means that in stating, in answering the question that requires you to state, give a complete and comprehensive statement that is short and self-explanatory. Students misses out marks in this case by one, giving a one-word answer, or maybe giving a statement that is not complete, that remains hanging. In that case, in those two cases, they miss out marks. For your own assignment, you can check out state 3 conditions for the formation of a delta. Or maybe if I just go through them, you understand that a delta is a feature that is formed at the mouth of the river, definitely at the odd stage, where the river is depositing its water into its mouth. And one of the conditions for a delta to be formed is that the river must be carrying relatively large load, because a delta is forming from deposition. And for deposition to take place, it means that the load must be available. The other reason or the other condition is that the rate of load deposition should be greater than the rate at which it is being eroded by maybe the waves, if the river is depositing at in the ocean or the lake, and any other reason. Also, the river profile should be clear without obstacles such as rock outcrops. And when we talk of the river profile, is that the larger longitudinal flow or nature of the river right from its source up to the mouth. So it should be clear in that it doesn't have rock outcrop along the profile. It doesn't have oxbow lakes. Those are what we refer to as the filters for some of the things that might reduce the load. Also, the other term is differentiate. And differentiate here, the candidate is required to give the difference in definition of terms in question. Usually, you are differentiating between two terms. And when you are differentiating, basically you are required to define the two terms in one statement. That is whereby you are joining them with what we call a differentiating conjunction, which could be while, whereas, or on the other hand. For instance, if you have been asked to differentiate between weathering and mass wasting, you only need to know the definition of those two terms, and then you define them and you join them with either whereas, while, or on the other hand. For instance, we define weathering as the breakdown, disintegration, and decay of crustal rocks near or on the Earth's surface in situ. And we define mass wasting as the movement of materials down the slope under the influence of gravity. So when you are differentiating, you merge them together by either of the three differentiating conjunctions. You tell us that weathering is the breakdown, disintegration, and decay of rocks near or on the Earth's surface in situ, while mass wasting is the downslope movement of materials under the influence of gravity. And when you're marking, students may miss out a mark when they define the term weathering and they forget the word in situ, because these rock materials are disintegrating but they are not moving. The word in situ there simply means without movement. Also, when you define weathering and you forget under the influence of gravity, you miss a mark because the materials cannot move on their own. They must be triggered by the force of gravity. And that is what we basically refer to as differentiating. There are some conditions where a student may lose a mark, and just go through them very fast. A student may miss a mark if he or she defines one part of the or one term and leaves the other term. For instance, they define the term weathering and leaves out mass wasting. That will be definition. And yet the question is differentiation. So the student will not have answered the question. So he or she misses the mark. Number two, if he or she defines the terms separately. For example, he or she opens uh, the sentence, defines weathering, then open another sentence, define mass wasting. He or she will not be answering the question. So they miss out marks because of not adhering to what we call the rubric or the rules of the question. Number three, if the candidate forgets to join the definitions by either of the above three words, because it is only after joining that you will have comprehensively differentiated. Otherwise, it will be definition which is contrary to the question that you are asked. And it's also very important to note that in this question, it's normally awarded 2 marks, and we only score up to 2 marks. That is, would not award 1 mark in the name of attempting. If you don't follow the conditions that you've given above, you will score 0. So we don't award 1 for attempting. It is either you score 2, that's the full mark, or you score 0. That is in case where you have not adhered to those rules. There's also another term that is label, and labeling goes especially where there is a diagram. You've been given a diagram and then you are asked to label the parts marked A, B, C maybe. What you're supposed to understand here is that when labeling also we look at the spelling. So the spelling of the term should also be correct. And the labeled part should correspond to the name that you've given it. For instance, students mainly confuse when you're looking at the topic action of water in limestone areas. We have what we call the stalagmites and the stalactites. Sometimes students may confuse. So ensure that the name you've given corresponds to the part that you have labeled. Then another very common term also is describe. And in describing, the candidate is required to give the procedural explanation of something. And the candidate may be required to describe a process, a landform, or characteristics of something. And when you are describing the process, that is how something was formed. For instance, in paper 1, when you are describing the formation of a landform, it is very important that you start with the pre-existing conditions. What was there before what you are describing was formed? And it's also very important to note that it is always procedural. So we stop marking where the procedure is lost or where the student loses the procedure. Mainly, description of processes is mainly in Geography paper 2, and we will look at it in subsequent lessons. This is, for instance, when you're looking at the topic agriculture and you've been asked to describe sugar processing immediately after harvesting has been done, and still takes us back to the same case that it should be procedural, and we stop marking where procedure has been lost. Maybe if I just take it through very easily, when you have been asked to describe the formation of a rift valley, by maybe tensional forces. When I say start by pre-existing condition, is that tell us what was there before. Definitely before, the landform was intact, and when tensional forces acted on crust or rocks, definitely pulling on opposite direction, of course the crust or rocks stretched and they were destabilized. Then when destabilization takes place, the following thing that took place definitely is formation of lines of weaknesses, which we refer to as fault lines. Then you give it procedurally. Third, you tell us that type of a fault known as normal fault was formed. Then the fourth part, definitely the middle block subsided while the side blocks overrided, whereby the middle block formed the floor of the Rift Valley and the side blocks formed the what you call the escarpments. Also, this question can come in two ways. You may be asked to describe, that is just by giving the text, or you may be asked to describe with the aid of well-labeled diagrams. And if you've been asked to describe with the aid of well-labeled diagrams, you find that that question will have a considerable number of marks, or more marks. So that means that you have to divide the marks into two, whereby the first half falls for the text and the other half will fall for the diagrams. So a student should never draw one final diagram in this case. They should draw a series of diagrams, because each stage, as I was describing, each stage attracts a mark both on the text and on the diagram. So it is advisable to draw a series of diagrams, as many as they are in the text, so that you can be able to score the full marks. Also, the other term is explain, and in this case, the candidate is required to give a detailed account of the phenomena in question, and the answer must be given in 3 parts for you to score. Majorly, when you've been asked to explain, you'll find that each point will carry 2 marks. But it's advisable that you give your answer in 3 parts. 3 parts here, I mean that give the point, then underline it very well, then come and explain or give an account of it. And then after that, tell us how does it influence, or what is the effect of that account to human activities, especially by being asked to explain significance of something to human activities. For instance, they have been asked to explain 4 significances of faulting to human activities. Definitely, you will be able to give it in 3 parts, whereby you have the point there, formation of depression. Then you underline it. Then you come and tell us that an equal subsidence of land forms depressions, which may result to formation of lakes. For example, the Rift Valley lakes. Now the third part comes in when you're giving us the significance or the importance of that lake to human activity. And you tell us that the lake, which may be used as a fishing ground, or may be used to provide water for irrigation and even domestic uses. So today we were looking at the terms that are mainly used in the setting of geography papers in general, and I was leaning on geography paper 1. So next time we'll be looking at the map work. That is the question number 6, which is always compulsory, or which is compulsory in the setting of geography paper 1. And in the subsequent topics, will also lessons will also be able to look at the various topics. So our lesson ends there today. I want to wish you a very good evening, and remember to keep safe. You can follow the subsequent lessons on YouTube channel by the name Ayieko Jakoyo. Thank you.